Magic makers, I'm taking a little bit of a detour today, but it's an awesome detour. So we are talking today with Miss Solana Lewis. I met her maybe 2 years ago. I think it was during COVID. I met her, and she just, one, has a great vibe. Two, she is a power lifter. And it was really interesting meeting her because we come at fitness from such a different end of the spectrum. For most of my career, I worked with women who wanted to shrink their bodies to be, as a way to change their body composition, to see how low, how lean they could get in the body composition. She's on the opposite end of the spectrum. She is working with women to say, how can I get strong as fuck? That is their ultimate goal. Like, how heavy can I lift stuff? And that is what we're going to talk about today. And it's just going to be such a great conversation. I'm so excited to have her here because many of you, have followed me out of the competition world, but many of you are just like, I just want to be strong. How do I get strong? And here is the lady who can help us talk all about that. Welcome to the show, Solana.
Hey y'all, first of all, Kim, thank you so much for having me on. I also love vibing with you. I'm like, it's gonna be a cool talk because we started out in the same place. I started with the clientele that you just described. And so the transition's been pretty incredible. And the fact that pretty much 95% of my clientele now is female powerlifters has been a dream come true. And it's so different from where I started. So I'm pretty stoked.
Yeah, so let's just do a back end. Like, I know you went to school, you were like, I want to be a personal trainer. And like all of us, you go through personal training, mm-hmm. and you think it's one thing. You show up at the gym and it is like, you're like, dude, this was not in the manual.
I know, 100%.
So did you start out going for just general population? Like, how did you come into the powerlifting world?
How did I come into the powerlifting world? So I'm gonna try to make a long story a little shorter because I don't like to ramble too much about my intro. But basically, I always knew I wanted to do something that was exercise because throughout school my entire life, I was an athlete and all I liked was exercising. Like, I only liked PE class, period. Like, that was it. Like, everything else sucked to me. So I get to college and I see a major with the word exercise in it, and that's why I picked it. Like, that was it. I didn't even know what exercise got you. I didn't even understand what it would become. I didn't even know you could become a personal trainer with it, which you don't even need a degree in to be. But I was like, I like that word, so we're gonna do it. But when I was a junior in college, I started working with group training. So I did group training. It's like 25 people come in and we bounce around. You bounce around, and I discovered I hated it. I was like, this is not fun. Like, I'm sorry, but these people aren't really getting stronger. They look the same after a year. Like, they just bounce around with 5-pound weights. I got kind of discouraged from telling people to lift heavier. But from the person in charge of the gym. So moving on, I graduate college, and at this point, I'm already in powerlifting because I started powerlifting at 19. At 19, I'm a junior in college as well. So my friend got me into it. He saw me lifting, said, hey, you should be a powerlifter. I was like, what's a powerlifter? He took me to his meet to watch him compete, and I saw girls doing it, and I just thought it was cool. I was like, yo, girls who look like, I had that same idea. I didn't want to get bulky. I had that idea early. I was like, none of these girls look like men, which I thought you'd be a man if you powerlift. They're like, they look strong. Exactly. And they look awesome. So I thought, let me give it a shot. So I gave it a shot and never looked back. So at this point, I'm in powerlifting, graduate, and become a personal trainer at Equinox. I worked there for like 3 years, from 20 years old to I guess 23.
Yeah,
I guess 23. And that's when I worked with the exact clientele you described. Everyone wants to shrink. Everyone wants to shrink, especially when I changed from Equinox to a different gym where the town theme was how skinny can you be? People would parade their eating disorders around me. They would literally come in and be like, aren't you proud of me? I had a stick of gum all day yesterday. I'm like, oh my gosh, why would you say that to me? What's happening?
You're like, I'm starving just hearing that.
Yeah, girl. So I transitioned from that during COVID to all powerlifters, basically. I'm an online coach. I only do online, by the way. So it's all online powerlifting coaching. And as a powerlifting person myself, I just was like, you know what? I want to kind of transition because I love getting stronger.
Yes.
And so I started just advertising myself online as just a powerlifter and just a powerlifting coach. and they started kind of slowly trickling over to me, and I fell in love with helping women get stronger. As you get stronger, you realize that you eat to fuel yourself.
Yes.
So it's crazy because a lot of people come with that same idea of like, I want to shrink, or like, okay, fine, I want to put on some muscle, but I still don't want to like overeat.
Right.
And all of a sudden it turns into, I want to eat to get stronger. And so now food is fuel is good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it really is a big mindset shift. Every single client I've ever had who comes to me, well, most of them, they still have this idea of, but I'm still scared to overeat, but I still want to get stronger.
Right.
And it kind of naturally just turns into, I want to eat more without me telling them to even eat more.
Right. Well, because I think, you know, what happens is as I'm getting stronger and I'm, you know, like I said, I'm not throwing around 5-pound weights. My body is getting hungrier, that and I'm starting to feel hungrier, you know, because it's like, I know on days that I lift, I'm hungrier. On days that I don't lift, I'm not. So, you know, part of the strength portion is that you start to listen to your body. And, you know, initially when a coach says, Solana, listen to your body, you're like, what the listen to my, like, what are you talking about?
Yes.
And because for so many of us, we have just been pushing down that hunger. Like the hunger is like, I can tough through this. Like my willpower can get me through my hunger.
100%.
But if your goal is to get stronger and you go to the gym and you try to put like, you know, 200 pounds up and you can't, you're like, oh, maybe I do need that food in order to put the 200 pounds up.
Exactly. And just like you said, like you literally get hungrier the more you lift. And you said you're not as hungry on days you don't lift. Girl, at this point, I'm hungry. I'm hungry every day.
So, okay, let's take a big step back. There's so many like directions we could go. So big step back. So let's just explain to everyone who has no idea what powerlifting is. Because I know before I knew what powerlifting was, the only thing I saw were like the big Russian guys on the Olympics. That's all I saw. So what, if I were to say, hey, I want to do powerlifting, what does powerlifting include?
Okay, great question. Powerlifting is only the barbell back squat, the barbell bench press, and the barbell deadlift, either performed as sumo variation with wider legs, hands inside the legs, or conventional hands inside. Yeah, sorry, hands outside the legs. I'm about to mess it up, right? That's it. If you think Olympics, there is no powerlifting is not an Olympic sport. So anyone who's thinking, oh, powerlifting, that's not in the Olympics, you're thinking weightlifting. And I get it. The words are so similar, right? The words are so similar. Yes. But no, we're not an Olympic sport. You've never seen us in the Olympics. Girl, we're just the squat, bench, and deadlift. The whole point of powerlifting is to lift the most amount of weight you possibly can for one rep. So this is how a meet works. I'll make it real short, don't worry. So you get to squat 3 times, bench 3 times, and deadlift 3 times. So you get a total of 9 attempts. And the goal is to build into that 3rd attempt and make it the heaviest attempt you can possibly put up, so that at the end, they add together your heaviest attempt of each lift. So your heaviest squat, bench, and deadlift, and that's your total. The person with the highest total wins, and everyone has a weight class. So the highest total in each weight class wins.
Gotcha. So if I like say, just make it simple, like if my attempt was like highest across the board was 200, I get 600 points.
Yes, boom, right there.
Okay. Now, so my goal is to build into it. So as I'm training for this, I'm working towards, am I training my full body? Am I always just doing bench, dead, squat?
Excellent question. So it's both, right? So at any time of the year, whether my client is 5 weeks away from competing, so really close, we call that in season or in prep, or your next meet is 6 months away, we technically call it, essentially off season. Like we're not literally preparing for a meet that's around the corner. You're still should be always squatting, benching, and deadlifting. However, what really changes is how much volume you do and how much more other stuff you can do. So for example, most of my clients now, we a lot of us just competed because we had a lot of big meets in the month of June. So now a lot of my clients are squatting, benching, and deadlifting less. But still every week. And instead of doing maybe barbell back squat 3 times in a week, we'll do it once or twice a week. And then we'll just really hammer in like a hack squat or a pendulum squat, because these lifts are stressful on the body. Like a low bar back squat is stressful. It's a lot of technique. It's a lot of, we're pushing really heavy. And also anything that's free weight is essentially tougher because I had to teach people how to use their entire body to lift as much weight as possible.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I focus on every muscle. I'm like, yo, your foot position needs to be different so you can lift more. Your wrist needs to be a certain position. You need to squeeze the bar more on your squat. Like I focus on every little minute detail. So now I get to take a step back and do stuff that's essentially easier, less thinking, more volume, get you stronger, push heavier so that we can go into the next meet. And then we got to do a lot more squat, bench, and deadlift, and you're going to be real tired.
Yeah. So, you hit on something that I think many people, I don't care what your goal is, they lose sight of. And this is how Solana and I met. We both were taking a course more about teaching women just the subtle nuances of getting into form, because so many of us for years have just been going to the gym and just kind of, because we're stronging our way through a squat. And when, as Solana talked about it, it's like, well, if I change the position of these little things, I could get deeper. If I change the position of these little things, I could lift heavier, where many of us are feeling stuck and we don't understand that it's something as simple as a breath work. It's something as simple as like, if I toed out versus keeping my feet straight. And so for many of you, like, oh, I'm not going to powerlift. So why do you know that? Like, even if you are just trying to be like just as strong as you could possibly be, or just a regular person going to a body pump class, having good form is essential because, one of the things I really like about Solana is that as she trains you, she wants you to be healthy, because how many people, especially in powerlifting, are like jacked up for maybe years because of incorrect form?
A lot of people, girl, a lot. And the funny thing is, whenever I get a new client, they're so excited because like, I'm gonna get stronger. I'm like, well, yeah, that's literally my job. If we don't get stronger, I failed you, right? Like that'd be pretty bad. But we spend the first month like just focusing on technique. I'm like, I don't even care about wasting the bar. Like, forget about your 1 rep max, because you might cut it in half or lower for everything we touch, because we're just focusing on technique. And then all of a sudden, when the technique is finally on point, and there is technique you have to have for this sport, like there's literally rules. If you don't hit the technique, you're gonna get red lights. You will bomb out the meet. That means like the numbers don't count. It's like you went there for no reason, right? So we hone in on that technique, because then once we do that, we can actually get you stronger from a base of like a really strong, like solid technique form. And then all of a sudden you'll be surprised. You can add more weight because your technique was better, not because I got you even stronger yet, but because your technique's better, so you can more efficiently move that weight.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's like, I always say, like, for a lot of my clients, I talk about the unsexy, right? It is unsexy for you to give me, foundational movements. Like it's unsexy for you to be like, today you're going to do bird dogs with no weight at all. Today you're going to do like band work. You're going to do all these things that, like you're looking like down the line, that if I'm able to like get my pelvis in the right position, everything else is going to be so much easier for me. And it's so hard as like, for many of us, we're doers, right? We want to come in and do. I want to come in and lift heavy shit. And you're telling me I'm just using bands? The hell? Like
100%. So for a powerlifter, I say powerlifting is the most unsexy sport in the world. Like it tops every sport. You know why? Because literally we do 3 movements forever. That's it. Like weightlifting, even, which is Olympic lifting, which is when the weight goes over your head, which is probably what y'all thought powerlifting was before I told you, right? Like that's even more fun because it's okay. That's more fun because you get to do a lot of our stuff to work on that overhead work. Like you get more variations in weightlifting because I've seen it. I have weightlifting friends, but when it comes to powerlifting, like essentially most people have done a barbell back squat and barbell bench press and barbell deadlift at some point, and you do it forever. It's like we're just honing on technique on the same thing over and over again. And powerlifters are all overthinkers because there's so much information out about the barbell squat, bench, and deadlift that most people come to me not because of a lack of knowledge, but they have too much information and they need to discard half of it. So I gotta tell them what to focus on. So when you know what to focus on for your body, everything changes.
Well, it's funny because it's like, I think, teaching women who do competitions, first of all, the internet love it and hate it at the same time, because I can Google the shit out of anything. And, one person's telling me I got to do A, B, and C. The other person's like A, B, and C sucks. And the other person's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
well, C is the most important. Like you got to
Mm-hmm.
really, if you're not doing C, then you're never going to qualify for anything. And it just, you know, as a person, like, you're just like, who do I trust? Who do I believe? And, you know, for, you know, someone like yourself, you're like, it's challenging because you're like, yeah, they all have merit. However, you're here, like you're starting at like ground zero and we're trying to build you up.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But once the crazy thing, like once your technique's on point, like the buildup starts really fast. Like
Right.
it's crazy. Like everyone who gets their technique on point will see this super compensation effect of like, oh my gosh, I'm lifting way heavier. Now we're focusing on the weight
Right.
because you never knew that your technique was stopping you from lifting more.
Right. And because it's like, you know, you've experienced this. You go to the gym and there are not a lot of women like, you know, throwing the heavy weights on the rack. And you're just, and you're, so you don't have anyone else there as like a guide. Like no one else. It's like, you're not looking at someone squat heavy and you're like, oh yeah, like look at how she's doing that. Like there's no one else that you're just like, oh, that's interesting. Or like you see like the like fucking meatheads and they're like, you know, their squat like barely gets them on a toilet. And you're just like, and you're like, dude, that's all you got?
Oh my gosh, I know. And so you're right, Kim. Like when you go to a commercial gym, because most people listening here probably go to a commercial gym, you still don't see a ton of women like taking the barbells out. You definitely see more women around
Yeah,
the
you
weight room
do.
now, which I freaking love. But you don't know even that powerlifting exists because you don't like see girls doing a heavy barbell squat, heavy bench press, heavy deadlift. But what's crazy, Kim, is that my average powerlifter is a master's woman above the age of 40.
Yeah. Well, because it's like, you know, I know me, like I've aged out of the things that I don't want to do, like weightlifting. Like, you know what? I got a hinky shoulder. Do I
Mm-hmm.
really want to be throwing shit over my head?
You can, but
Probably. Right. I
you
can't.
know.
Right. But it's like, I probably can, but it's like, you know what? I spent too much time rehabbing the shoulder. I know that like it impacts my acts of daily living. But
Mm-hmm.
if you get down to it, you're like, well, those three things are pretty safe. Like there's not a lot of moving parts to it. There's not a lot of coordination to it. So I'm like, you know what? It's something that I can try, but it's also something that I like that I could probably do it in my house if I have kids.
Yes. Especially during COVID, this was the best sport to be in. Because if
Yeah.
you had a rack and a bar, you could train
Right.
perfectly in sync for your sport. That's all you needed, guys. A barbell with some weights to go on it, a squat rack, and a floor that can handle some deadlifts. That's it.
Yeah.
And the bench.
Right. But it, you know, so it's like, you're right. Cause like for someone over 40, it's like, you know, I've been there, done that. I've jumped around. I've done all the things. I ain't got time to do all that. But if I can like get like really focused in on these three things, I can probably not spend 2 hours at the gym getting ready for a show. And it's something that like I can easily like share with my family. You know, like I could like throw my toddler in the corner while I'm doing this.
100%. And Kim, I actually say like I wish all women tried powerlifting. Now I know that's like something that's like really selling out all women on the earth. But yeah, because everyone should experience what it's like to progress and get stronger. And what's cool about powerlifting is you can literally see the progress. You can look at the numbers you were hitting 3 months ago and compare it to a number now and see progress. So many women who are trying to change their body and lifting too light, to be blunt,
Oh God,
like they
yeah.
don't see the progress because they don't have a number to go after. They don't understand that they should be lifting heavier, maybe with the barbell, or at least going heavier on the machines. And like, unless you're someone who's taking progress photos every other week, which most people aren't, like
No.
what progress you're gonna see? So what keeps people enthralled is you have a legit goal that's not just look cute in the bikini.
Right.
Right, a bigger goal than that. You can see the progress of the goal, and I can show you literally the progress and compare two videos next to each other, and you're like more motivated to keep going.
Well, and you know, I want to go through on that because a lot of times when I'm, you know, working with women in the gym, I'm like, so many of you are trying to crush on whatever piece of cardio over there. And I'm like, I'm going to see more results by lifting heavier. And that's going to translate into just more active daily living. You know, it's like, yeah, I have a woman, she's a gardener. And she was like, oh my God, Kim, she's like lifting mulch. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, that's a deadlift. Like,
Pretty much, right?
That is a deadlift. I'm like, you're lifting that. I don't know, mulch weighs 25, 30 pounds. I'm like, that's a deadlift. Like, that's what you are trying. That's why we want to lift heavy weights for just like our lives.
It's going to translate into your life 100%. That's why I love my masters. Like, so everyone, like, they're in their 40s and 50s. Most of my clients have kids. Like, they're regular people. People think powerlifters are like some crazy, like, I don't know, just like, oh, you're like, I couldn't be one. Like, you know, that's for special people. I'm like, my clients who are crushing are in the 40s and 50s with 3 kids, like just going to their basement or to their commercial gym most of the time and lifting heavy and recording it on a tripod.
and I, you know, I like it because it's like, you know, as a result of lifting heavier, I am shrinking.
Yes, that's the other thing that, oh my gosh, I don't think, what did I do this? I had a conversation with my Facebook group. I have a women's only Facebook group just for powerlifters. Like, you don't have to be my client. Like, if you're a woman, you powerlift, it's called Strong Woman, it's free, hop in, I'm hanging out in there every day. And so one thing, like, we do a high of the week every Friday, say one positive thing. Doesn't have to be your training. It can be life as well. But like most people post about their training. And the big thing is people, like someone will always say like nearly every week, like, yo, like one thing I noticed is like my body's changed so much, but my goal was not just to have my body change. It's just the result of me working my butt off in powerlifting. Like that's it. Like all of a sudden your goal is no longer to shrink, but because you focus on getting your body stronger and feeling it for your sport, you have essentially, quote, shrunk. Right. Exactly. You've gained muscle, you've lost body fat, which is what people mean when they say, I want to like get toned.
Right.
You know that word, toned. Toned is building muscle. And you will build muscle powerlifting and have fun because you can literally watch the numbers go up. And then there's a weight class for everyone. We haven't even talked about that. There is no such thing as I'm too big or too small for powerlifting. There's a weight class that exists for every human being. It starts at 48 kilos, which is less than 100 pounds. Meaning if you weigh less than 100, anyone can still do it. Because if you're like 100 pounds or less, you're in that weight class, right? And it goes all the way up to, what's the number? 242 plus. Like literally meaning like if you're above 242 pounds as a woman, there's just a weight class for everyone above that number. That's a massive range. So
as I kind of like get ready for a show, and so do I think to myself what weight class I want to be in?
Oh, for polytomy? Yeah, but when you're first starting, my advice is simple for everyone. Compete at the weight class you're already at.
So then if, you know, say I, you know, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm in it, I'm going for it. Because I remember, so I done a couple competitions where I had to bench press 60% of my body weight. And so of course I wanted to have the lowest body weight. So that I wasn't bench pressing 4 million pounds.
Okay.
So is that kind of like a similar philosophy in powerlifting, or is it more about knowing who's showing up and knowing that like so-and-so is in a certain weight class? Like,
I hear it.
How do I get like, because you know, if I'm coming to this, and most women, their goal is like that scale. And so if I'm coming into this, you know, am I chasing that number on the scale, or am I chasing more my weight numbers?
Great question. You're chasing your weight numbers. And I can say that honestly for anyone from the beginner to the elite, because the goal is to get as strong as possible, right? And then wherever you kind of fall weight-wise is where I say you should compete. Now, as you get more experience, as you get higher level, you start competing for money. And I'm talking like this is now top 5%, like most people won't get this far because there's not a lot of money in our sport actually for like competing and winning, honestly.
I mean, you're lucky there is money in
it. Just got started. I'm so happy about it.
in figure and fitness competitions, I remember this girl was like, she's like, Kim, she's like, you know, they always talk about like getting a pro card. What do you get? And I was like, a bigger trophy. Pretty
much.
You know, a bigger $20. Maybe your trophy is now $30. Like there's no money in the sport. Because I said, I'm like, if there was a Mercedes at the end of it, you bet your sweet ass I would still be competing.
Oh my gosh, if people are motivated by money. I'm motivated by money. I like money. Like
but like there's no prize. So like the fact that you're like, there's money, I'm like, okay, I'm perking up now.
Yes.
But yeah.
So the stronger you get, right, you get to the more elites, we call it competitions, and that's where you get a chance to like win money, or even when like beats a national record, which is truly a big deal because that means you're the strongest person like in the nation. And so even for the elites, wherever your weight is, if you're like 5 pounds ish, maybe up to 7, that's kind of big, above a weight class, at that point you'll probably cut down to that lower weight class.
Okay, so so basically, you know, let's say if you said, as you said, like 5 weeks is kind of like your in season. So if I'm within 5 weeks and I'm within like 5 to 7 pounds of the next weight class, you and I as a coachee would have a conversation like, hey, do you want to cut to get down to the next weight class, or we're just going to stay in the higher weight class?
Yeah, we're having that conversation if this meet will get you either a national record or get you into an even higher level meet to compete for money. Like if there's a reason, you know, if it's just like, oh, this meet, like you'll get first, but first just gives you a medal, that's the extent of it.
Right.
Let's just compete where we are. You can probably still get a medal for second or third in this weight class and not have to cut. Cutting is kind of tough, but what I will say, I don't know how experienced or how much you know about like water cut, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Typically, you'll just water cut about 5 pounds. Yeah. And then if you have a good rehydration process, which you should, this is what you hire a coach for, then you'll be fine to go. You're not like legit trying to lose 5-7 pounds of fat. In you know 5 weeks. You lose like 5 pounds of water, maybe like 1 pound of fat, like literally cut down a little bit, but like it's just you're not really like dieting down hard. Yeah.
Gotcha. No, and I like that because it's like, you know, one of the ways I work, and I know you work this way, is collaboration, right? Like you're not like, okay, do this, and your person's like runs away. It's like, okay, like what's going on? You know, because I've you know, we've been on a bunch of coaching calls together, and I know you're like, what's going on in your life? So that you, as you're programming, and you know that like maybe they're going on vacation, you're like, so you're not going to be spending 4 days at the gym. So what's it going to look like for you this week, so that we can make sure that we're like in alignment with each other?
100%. Just like any coaching relationship, you should take your client's life into account. So like the person who I have cut will be the person who can dedicate time to it. This is extremely important to them because you can compete just for fun. Because again, like there's local meets in every single state. You can go down the street, compete for fun, call it a day, get high five your kids, your friends,
and it's just a goal.
Get food after. Yep. And then there's a person who's like, no, I want to get into like nationals where like the best get to compete. And only like 5% of the people in the federation even get to go. Okay, cool. If we can dedicate the time, like that kind of energy into it, then yeah, let's do a water cut. But that water cut, first of all, it's gonna be 7 days long. So it's 7 days of this is not great. It's not the worst thing ever. You're not dying. There's no extreme water cuts happening over here because we have a 2-hour weigh-in.
Yeah, exactly.
Meaning you weigh in and then 2 hours later you compete. So we're not like it's not like wrestling where you're dragging your body in, you're half dead. Like we're just cutting a little bit of water.
You're not weighing in on a Friday and competing on a Saturday.
Exactly.
You're showing up Saturday morning, everyone's stepping on the scale, and then as soon as that's done, we're going.
Yeah. It's like you're just a little tired and a little groggy, and no one's trying to get you killed over here. You're not gonna go to the hospital.
Yeah. So for, you know, for a typical person, how much time would I say spend on average at the gym? Like, you know, what does I know it depends on the person, but like on average, like what is an average person? Like, am I there 5-6 days a week? Am I there 2 hours? Like how long am I working out?
Cool. And like you said, it depends on the person, but at the same time, we can still give some ideas, right? I would say if you can dedicate 3 days a week to training for up to 2 hours, then you're in a great spot to start powerlifting. That's 6 hours grand total a week. And then there are people who have more time. So then all of a sudden we can spread it out and make it 4 times a week and like literally have shorter sessions.
Right. So, you know, if I said to you like, hey, Solana, I have about like 5 days a week. So then you're like, okay, I'm going to be there maybe an hour, maybe a little over an hour
100%
in the gym. But if I'm like, hey, I only got 3 days, it's like, you know, I can only work out on weekends because of my job or my kids or whatever, then you're saying, okay, then it's going to get a little bit more intense for you based on how much time you have to deliver.
Yeah, we got to put more work into those sessions and they're going to take longer, but we can still get it done. You just have to be able to, when you can go to the gym, can you spend that 2 hours at the gym? because that will be longer. And I wish I could say like, it only takes half an hour, 3 times a week. But no, we do have to warm up to our heavier numbers.
Right.
We have to, if you're doing twice a week, like we got to do squat, bench, and deadlift for both those sessions, the whole, like squat and bench and deadlift.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, that's where it will take a bit more time. But I will still say most people probably have time for powerlifting. They just assume that powerlifters are in the gym for 3 or 4 hours. That's the stigma we have. Right. No, and like the people in there for that long, they're just BSing. Like no one needs to be there for 4 hours.
Oh my God. I remember, for figure fitness competitions, it's now getting better, but it was like a minimum, you were there 90 minutes minimum, 2 hours max. And I'm like, now I look back, I'm like, God, why do I have all the time? And so, for, my people listening, like if you are that person, you have 5 days, it's like, that's 5 hours. Like that's an hour to do this. And I'm like, many of us can find that hour.
Yes, 100%.
If we choose to go this route. And so I'm getting stronger, I'm doing this. So if I decide to like, all right, this sounds really good, Solana. If I decide to do this, about how much lead time do I need up to a show?
Ooh, great question. How long of prep do we need?
Yeah, right? Or does it depend on, depend on what my fitness level is?
So it does depend on your fitness level. Like if you're coming to me for coaching, I'm assuming you've already done a barbell back squat, bench, and deadlift. It may not look great, right? But like you're not like, hey, I've never exercised before, and now we're gonna do a meet. Because like, okay, now we're gonna take a long time. But honestly, most of the people who come to me, they do come to me saying, I've never done a meet before, but I like squatting, benching, and deadlifting. Right. I did some random program online that I found and I liked it. And that person, probably we can get them ready for the first meet in 4 months, for the first meet ever. That's because I gotta get that technique down for them. Yeah. Because literally you have to be at competition standard. And then once we get to that point, let's take 10 to 12 weeks to do our first official meet prep.
Yeah. Yep. So now, as you said about technique, so I'm assuming there's judges. And so when I'm at the bench press, what am I judged on? Like what is the technique that I'm able, because it's funny because I see people, so when I was prepping for the bench press, I worked with a power lifter, and they, you can get away with some shit. And so yes, where like, as me as a personal trainer, I'm like, this is how I was taught to bench press, and I'm doing it like the regular. He's like, oh girl, he's like, you're not gonna be able to lift as much weight unless you do this, this, and this. So are there rules that you have to get away with, like, squat depth and things like that?
Let's go into it. So let's start with the squat. So for a powerlifting squat, you have to squat with your hips below the level of your knee at the bottom of the squat. So hips, essentially that means below parallel, right? Right. Your hips have to get lower than the knee crease for it to count. That's really all that truly matters. There's a couple other things, like small things like you're waiting for a command. They tell you when to start it. They tell you when to rack it. But for the most part, you can squat below parallel. Boom, you've hit the technique for powerlifting. Bench press, that's the one where we get hate for, because we're the people who y'all see arching in the gym. And by the way, the stigma of arching will hurt your back. Guys, only if you do something wrong will you hurt yourself. No, your back naturally has a lordotic curve. We're just pushing a little bit more into it. You're not going to hurt yourself. And you can have more stable shoulders if you actually arch in the bench press. So for the bench press, the bar has to touch your chest, stop moving so you can hear press, and you can press it back up and then you rack it. So that's why you see us with a big arch, because one, it helps us use more leg drive as well. Yeah. You can push into your legs more while you have that arch. So like the bench press for a powerlifter is a full body movement. You're using your legs, your arms, and your back to help you get the weight up. Well, and you can arch. There's no limit to how high you can arch, right? So again, this is the people who get the hate on Instagram when they have like a huge arch. I don't have that kind of arch. You have to have the body
to be able to get that nice
and the flexibility. Like that's literally like, I will never have a massive arch. I just won't. Never. Unless I break my back in half. Like I asked a doctor to break my spine for me. Like it's just not gonna happen. But yes, you can arch as high essentially as you want. There's no limit. And then if you have a really high arch, you might have a low range of motion. If you got long arms and legs like me and not a big arch, you might have a whole, 12 inches you're going down to your chest.
Exactly. You're like, I want the crocodile arms at this point.
I know. And then the deadlift's the most simple one. All you gotta do, you lift it up. You have to lock out the shoulders, meaning they're pulled back a little bit. hips have to be locked out, meaning you can't like have your hips bent backwards, like you have to fully stand up, and that's it. And then once you stood up, they say bring it down. You bring it back down to the floor without dropping it, and boom, you have a competition ready deadlift.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think that the squat and the deadlifts are pretty straightforward. I think for a lot of people, because I know that's one of the things that the powerlifter taught me was that if you squeeze your glutes and your legs, your back has nothing to do with it. Your back is just helping you get access to your lats. So the more I have access to my lats, the heavier I can lift.
I love it. Yeah, pretty much. Like you get in that position, you see your back may be arched, but then besides that, it's leg drive. Yes, you're squeezing your glutes. Yes, you're squeezing your fingers into that bar to get more forearm activation. And you're just staying in that nice position and you're just boom, hitting the bench. It's literally full body.
Yeah. And so as soon as he said that, and then I was like, as I was like, kind of, again, I have to go through the breakdown to build myself up to that bench press. It was like, okay, so it's like, as people were starting, as I was programming it, I said to people, I'm like, we're going to do hip thrust. And I'm like, what is a hip thrust? I'm like, it is the bottom of a chest press. I was like, as hard as you squeeze your glutes in a hip thrust, that's what you're going to do in your bench press. Because like so many people are like, oh, I'm going to hurt my back. And I was like, think hip thrust. And they were like, oh, I'm like, and then you're just moving your arms. And they're like, oh. And I'm like, as soon as like, shout out to Angelo, you're probably not listening, but like he was the person who just kind of like had to like have me like take the things and break it down. He's like, your chest is only about so strong. He's like, your lats strong, super strong. And he's like, let them help you. And it just made it so much easier to do the powerlifting way than like, I'm going to come all the way down to the bench and come all the way back.
Yep, with just my arms and no leg drive. Like, that's fine. That's fine. Just for the sport to get the most out of your bench press, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, you don't want to do it that way. So, so for many of us, like those three moves are moves we've done forever. If you've been, like you said, if I've been at the gym, I've done any of those three.
100%. That's why powerlifting's for everybody.
And I probably did it today. So I want to talk about the mindset piece. So, I come to powerlifting and I say, all right, Solana, let's get this done. And as you're provided me with my nutrition, what is the kind of the main focus for you when you're starting someone in their nutritional journey towards powerlifting?
So nutrition wise, it's what can we add more of to your diet? I always start with adding more because typically was what the issue is. They're trying to eat less and less and less. And I'm like, hey, let's add in more vegetables. Let's add in more protein. Okay, I will say when you're lifting to get as strong as possible, you will need more protein than the person who's just not necessarily competing, right?
Correct.
So we're going to push up that protein probably a little bit. We're going to see what vegetables are missing. We're going to make sure that we're eating carbs and protein before you train so you can have a nice feeling session.
Yeah.
And then after that, like I pretty much start people off at maintenance, which for most women, because again, most of my clients are women.
Here.
Yes, like literally starting at maintenance means we're increasing their calories because they're so used to under eating.
God, yes. So
yeah, we really start out with increasing. And then the only time I ever have them really go down is if you're like, okay, we're in a good spot. We've been nailing our protein, eating vegetables every day. Like we understand how to fuel ourselves for a nice session where we're going to feel good and we're going to feel like we're not running out of energy by the end of it. Okay, at that point, if you literally do also have a weight loss goal, we can then go into a caloric deficit.
Right.
And you can still get stronger because you're still feeling yourself really well before you train. So you have strong training sessions.
Right.
And the deficit is one that is like maybe 10% less calories than maintenance. We're not going to drop 50% of our calories off, right? It's just a little small decrease and keep that for a long period of time. And then on top of that, add in some extra steps, like literally extra walking and boom, you're in your deficit.
Yeah. So basically what you start with, and I absolutely love the add approach, is that, you're focusing on, all right, let's look at our protein, let's look at our vegetables, right? Because no one ever got fat saying I ate too much chicken, and no one got fat saying I ate too much asparagus. So we start there, and then we kind of start filling in the holes with the rest of your nutrition. But I also like that as I go into a session, because I think many of us go into a session underfed. And, then if I'm trying to, get to my max, if I'm underfed, it's going to be virtually impossible for me to even think about going heavier, especially, I don't know how many reps you program, but if I'm at like maybe the fourth set, I'm probably tired.
Yes.
If I haven't fueled properly prior to that session.
And that used to be me. I underate for years. And when I finally got my first nutrition coach a few years ago and they taught me how to eat for a session, I was like, I'll never undereat before I train again. Cause I didn't realize how bad I felt training. I didn't know. Like, that's crazy. You do for so long, you don't even know. You're like, man, you're not supposed to be exhausted. And you're only halfway through your session. You're 25 minutes in and you just feel like you want to drop dead on the floor. Like, no, that's
right. Yeah,
that means you didn't eat.
And and I want to say that goes for anybody. Like, there's plenty of times that I have people and I'm like, well, how do you feel when you work out? And one, they're like, what do you mean? Because they've just always felt the same way. Mm-hmm. And they don't even know that like they felt tired, because it's just how they've always felt training.
Exactly. And then another thing too, Kim, you have people who come to you saying like, oh, if I don't leave the gym feeling exhausted, I didn't really work out. Have you ever had someone say that to you?
Or sore. Exhausted or sore. And I'm just like, so why is that a sign? Like, why is that a sign? I'm like, I could just go and push my car for like 3 blocks. I'm gonna be sore.
I'm like, bro, I could go outside and hop on a trampoline for an hour and I'll definitely be sore. I just hopped in one thing for an hour straight. What's crazy about powerlifting, I think people think that, oh, those people, like, they must be like dying, like, you lift so heavy, like, oh my gosh, like, that takes a superhero, because if I did that, I'd be broken, I'd be so tired. Right. For me, I can honestly say it's very rare that I leave a session feeling exhausted.
Yeah. And
my clients, for the most part, unless they're first starting, it's the very first week and they haven't done these movements in this way, so it's technique that's making them tired.
Right.
They don't feel like crap. Like, we feel really good throughout the day. It brings us energy, because the way that you program, if you structure your program in a way that you can progress and still hit progressive overload, so like make your body tired and literally like push yourself past your limits slightly, but then you recover well, you'll feel really good all day.
Right. So you did like a couple things that I want to pull out. So the first part was, you're like, even if you're just like, you're lifting as heavy as you possibly can, like that is your ultimate goal when you go to the gym. But you're also knowing the day, like, because you're so in tune with your body now, you know the days that today's not the day. Today's not a day, I talk to my clients in red, yellow, and green. You know that like maybe you didn't get a good night's sleep. Maybe you got a lot of stuff on your mind. Maybe it's just life stuff going on that you're like, you know what? Today's not a day that I should even, and it's in your program. Today's a day to just attempt a heavy. And you're like, you know what? Today's not the day. And you just don't do it. You back off.
And you can do that. That's why, especially for my coaching, but this is very popular now in powerlifting coaching. We use something called RPE, which is rate of perceived exertion, right? So we may even, if you're like, hey, like that's too tough, like you want me to figure out the number based on my body, I get it, right? That's really hard when you first start. So I'm going to give you a weight range, and you can hit the lowest end of that range if you're not feeling it. Because I'm not going to give you a number you can't hit. I'm not going to make it so, oh, no matter what, this range is so small, like I have to basically max out today. Like literally, you can choose a number that is going to be something you can hit on that day. And on top of that, for all my clients, like every single day, they have to write down how much sleep they got, how was your nutrition the day before, how are you feeling, how was stress outside the gym. I see that every day. So if I can see the training starting to look a little funky, I can go to, okay, what's going on outside the gym?
Right, exactly.
100%. And I also want to quickly say, guys, I only have, and most powerlifters too, my clients only max out at their meets, and they compete on average 2 to 3 times a year. So we're not maxing out every week or every month. We literally max out 2 to 3 times a year, period.
Yeah. And I like that, because it's the same approach as if you were running, right? So it's like when I run a marathon, I don't run 26 miles. I run 21, and knowing that the momentum will get me through the last 5.5 miles. Mm-hmm. I will never run a marathon, so that's what I'm told. No,
Same.
I did run a half, and like the furthest I ran was 10, and momentum did not get me through the rest. It just made me pissed off, and and maybe realize that I will never run ever again. But for those of you guys who like running, rock on with your bad selves. But yeah, I like that approach, because it's like, making these numbers up, because I don't know. So it's like, all right, today on your bench press, you're going to go, do you have them do a 1 rep max, and then you program based on their 1 rep max back down? Or how do you get your range?
Oh, great. Yeah. So yes, I know the 1 rep max. If you first start with me, we do eventually either we'll max out early on, or if your technique's not there, I kind of guesstimate your 1 rep max based off of like, we'll do some heavy triples and doubles, see where that is, and then I can estimate from there. But yeah, I'm basing it off of your 1 rep max.
So let's just,
and then after you hit your heaviest set, we do back down work that's lighter.
Yeah.
So, I think you're asking.
So let's just make this number up. So say my bench press, my max is 100. So you're like, okay, so we're never going to hit 100 unless we're at the meet. So you say, you're like, all right, so today you're going to do anywhere from like 50 to 80. And so I decide how my day feels. And if it's a 50 day, I'm going to do 50. And if it's an 80 day, I'm going to do 80. And then,
pretty much.
And in your training, or I might do 60, might do 70, whatever it is, 75. But as I'm logging my work, you'll see, okay, if I'm consistently hitting on the lower end of what you've programmed, you'll be like, Kim, what's going on?
Exactly, right? So I'll say, hey, what's going on? But also, if you're filling in everything, I can see where your stress is, where nutrition is, etc. So maybe I can figure out on my own what's going on.
Right.
But yes, if you're always in the lower end, I'm also looking at videos every single week of you doing your movements. Right. So I can see like, okay, are you just literally too scared to go heavier? So like it looks really easy, but in your mind, you're like, oh, that was mentally tough for me to even get underneath the bar to press it. So I'm gonna say it was super hard. And you're like, this was actually easy. We gotta push you out of it, right? But yes, essentially. And also I will program the rest of your day based off whatever number you hit. So if you're like, hey, today I hit 50 pounds and you were thinking it would be 60, whatever, but you hit 50, I'm like, cool. Now we're gonna do some lighter work to kind of just build muscle and build momentum. And it's going to be like 15% less than you hit for that heaviest set. So it's based like the lighter work we do after is based off of what you hit in the gym. It's not like, oh, you're supposed to hit 80. So even though you hit 60, like now the rest of your work's going to be super heavy because we died.
Make up. Right. Exactly. Yeah. No. And I like that. And so, as people come in from like the mindset, the shift for you as you're kind of getting them out of this like scale weight, getting them out of the like not too much food, like what are some of the mindset shifts that you're helping your clients overcome?
Okay, I love this question. So one big mindset shift is like you just said, like I need to still eat less. So one thing we'll do when you first start with me, again, like weight class, like the weight class for everyone, right? So I'm like, hey, we'll take your weight like way less often than you're used to doing, especially because people like come to me saying I take it every day. I'm like, we might take it like once every 2 weeks, right? Because I do want to know where your weight is. Because we are in a weight class sport. I need to have an idea of where you're going to be. But we're going to take it way less. And I'm just going to make sure that we're fueled for every session. I want to see how you felt before the session started, how you felt after the session started, and how your energy is throughout the day. So in our weekly check-in, you're telling me how your energy's been throughout the day as well. So like we can shift from, oh, how much should I eat? And am I losing weight or whatever to how do I feel? Right. If I feel really good, and my training is going well, and I can show you if you're progressing in training by literally showing you the number, like so you can see your progress, you're gonna start to feel better and you're getting stronger. As a byproduct, you're probably gaining muscle, right? And if you're really new to this, you might be gaining muscle and losing fat at the same time, if you're really new to it, because that's what happens when you're a newbie. Right. So we're shifting away from the weight and we're looking at how you're actually progressing. And we don't really care too much about weight until we pick the meet and you're kind of like maybe 2 months out. And I'm like, okay, cool. So now we got to just look at your weight, but I want you to see it as this is data. Now this is hard to shift. It takes some of my clients a while to get to that point. This weight is data. We might take a little more off, maybe once a week, so I can just see where your weight is. But besides that, our main focus is how are we feeling fueled and are we getting stronger? Because I promise you, between those two things, your body's going to change in the way you want it to.
Yeah. And, I love the feeling fueled because I think like we talked about, so many of people think, and I'm sure it's out there, like if I don't leave this workout feeling like I just got hit by a truck, did I work out? And not knowing that part of it is, did I go in with something in the tank? Because if I go in on an empty tank, then there's only but so much I can expect out of my body. And I don't think many of us understand that. I don't think many of us understand this kind of like food workout continuum.
Yes. Like without the right fuel, you're gonna have a bad training session and you're not progressing, right? That's what, again, what's cool about the sport. Like, you want your numbers to go up, so we have to eat for it. And if you really start to focus more on numbers, but not scale numbers, I'm talking about the weight in the bar.
Yeah.
And when you see those go up, you'll care more about that than your weight. It will happen. It won't be the first week. I'm a realistic coach. It might take 6 months for that to really be like, yo, I care so much about the number that's going on the bar that I care less about my weight. Because realistically, when you gain muscle too, like sometimes kind of the scale goes up.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
So we can't have that be the hyper focus, because it might freak you out. And another thing that's cool too, one of my clients, and I love her so much because she's very open on Instagram about like her journey. And she's been losing a good amount of weight, but also getting so much stronger. And she's 55 years old. And she literally told me after her first meets, she was like, Solana, I walked into this room. I was so scared I was going to be like the biggest one here, or people were going to look at me funny. She was like, I was surrounded by all these women, and all we did was talk about our lifts. Like, no one mentioned a word about their body. No one. Like, you go into this atmosphere and everyone just cares about how strong you are. And what's cool about powerlifting, oh my God, I'm excited. It's probably the sport that is the most supportive. I mean, the community you get from powerlifting is insane, because when you go into a meet, everyone's going to cheer for you. Everyone. You will never see a meet where we all get quiet and someone's about to pull for their first even deadlift and we're just like bored and looking at our phone. Like, we are cheering. We are yelling for you. We don't need to know who you are. Like, everyone's so supportive, and there's literally a weight class for everybody. Like, we see small people in between. We see jack people. We see people who are on like a little bit heavier, and no one cares. Yeah. No one cares.
No, I like that. It's the competition I did where I did the chest press thing. It was very interesting because it's like from the competition world, I joined a group because I didn't want to be the only person in the dressing room and like scared and like nervous, because it's the first time you do it, you're like, I have no idea what to expect. And so I did it as a group, and it was just nice just to have other people who were like, girl, all right, just do this. Like, and then, when I did the bench press competition, as soon as you finish, like, you like just kind of like get your act together and you come back in and everyone's like, all right, you got this. You don't even know me. Like, I'm just some rando, and you're just like, all right, like, especially if you like, your first attempt, and like didn't go as you wanted because you probably got in your head. And like, they're like, you got another shot, like, let's do it. Like, and you're just like, you don't even know me and you're like cheering for me. That I think is just like the most fabulous thing that any sport can like muster, like that, like community of people. And just like, I think having that community makes you want to do it again and again and again.
Like, yo, you'll all of a sudden fall in love with the sport, man. I'm telling you, that's what gets people trapped and stay in the powerlifting.
Yeah, because if I think about like competing, like most of my friends are people I met doing fitness competitions. Because it's like, one, no one really understands, like, you're like, yeah, I maxed out on my deadlift today. Like, no one understands.
Yes, your
like,
average friends and family don't get it.
they don't get that. They don't get like, you're like, working on something, and like when you finally get it, you're like, yeah. And they're like, all right, was that cool? Yes, it was very cool.
You're like, okay, you don't have to explain how cool this is, because your friends who powerlift will just get it. And that's why too, like, especially in a time right now, a lot of people have home gyms still because of what happened in 2020, COVID, blah, blah. But like, the online community of powerlifting has grown a lot more because of that. So like, you can literally, if you don't have any friends around you powerlift and you're in a town that's in a state where like the gyms are 20 miles away, I don't know, you're in Alabama, like, there's probably in Alabama, but like stuff's farther. Like, literally, you can join an online powerlifting group and just talk about how well you did that day, and everyone's going to support you.
Right. Everyone gets it. Everyone gets it, and it's not weird, and you're not the strange girl. You're the like, yeah, I got you. I know exactly what that's all about.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
So, you have a podcast, but it's mostly about powerlifting, yes?
Yes, the Power and Lifting podcast is all about really getting more people into sport by educating them on things that the elite powerlifter, everything is simple, but the new powerlifter needs to know. It's all the stuff that I wish I knew. So I'm teaching on it, but also I have female powerlifters come on who have a lot of success, and we get to hear their story. And it's just a way to uplift more women in powerlifting, because our side, the sport, the women's side, has been a little bit undershadowed. There's a lot of powerlifting podcasts that has more men on it. And there are women who I want to hear from who I was like, if I don't do this myself, I'll never hear from them. So you get to hear cool people's stories about powerlifting, and you'll realize that you can probably relate to most of them. And also I'm teaching on small things that are like, these are short episodes, like teaching on something that's essentially simple, but you need to know it to be in the sport.
Gotcha. I absolutely love that. And then where can people find you on the socials?
Yes, on Instagram, I'm Solana_lifts, like you're lifting weight, lifts. So that's my Instagram and my TikTok. And then my website is Solana Lewis Training if you want to apply for coaching.
And then I ask everyone one last question before we finish up. What's one thing that makes you feel magical?
Ooh, one thing that makes me feel magical is accompanying my online client to a meet and watching them hit a PR. Like it's way above the feeling I get PRing myself.
Yeah.
Because I helped someone who probably thought they'd never make it to the platform, because most people come to me like, I love the idea of competing is cool, but they're so intimidated. Like, what's step one?
Yeah,
exactly. And to go from there all the way to they got to the platform, competed, and they hit numbers they never dreamed they would, because people dream too small, man.
Yeah.
They dream too small. It's like riveting. Like, they're excited, I'm excited, everyone's cheering, I'm screaming, they're crying, and I start crying. It's a whole thing. I'm way more emotional about my client competing than I am about competing myself.
So now, do you go to every meet with your client or just particular meets?
I wish I could. If you live near me, because I have people from all over the country and some people in different countries. So if you live near me, like within 2 hours, I will drive to your meets. And then when it comes to bigger national level meets, which is cool, I have a lot of masters clients who are getting into national level meets. I go to all the national level meets, right? Because they're bigger, we travel out to it. If you don't live near me or you're not doing a national meet, I prepare a friend of yours or whoever's from your gym, whoever, to set you up to have a good day, and I give them the game plan, and I'm with them online. Gotcha. But I'm not accompanying them physically all the time. I wish I could though.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I live in northern New Jersey, by the way, y'all, if you want to know where I live.
Yeah, it makes sense. You know, I know for me, for doing fitness competitions, you know, there's competitions all over the planet, and it's just, as a lone person, it's tough to be everywhere.
Yes, but what's cool is, even if it's your first meet, if you have a friend who like will just support you, don't even know about the sport, I've helped people like accompany their friend to the meet and have a great day. It's not rocket science. You just have to help them warm up and get like show up to the platform. It's not that hard. So anyone can do it. Yeah,
exactly. Awesome. Well, this was such a great conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time out to chat with us. And so anyone, like, reach out to her if you know she's normal. She's absolutely normal. Reach out to her if you're even like just kind of like, I don't know if this is for me. She can totally let you know from the conversation we've had here today. She's gonna say yes. It's for you.
Probably.
It's for you. And you know, like I said, you never know till you know. So you can always just like give it a shot. And if you're like, yeah, not for me, at least you tried it. And you can move on to something else. And if anything, you got a little more strength out of it.
And you got some gym PRs, so like you can't lose.
Yeah, so it's a win-win around the way. So thank you again so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Girl, you too.